Now let us take up MSP beyond cost of cultivation and understand what does this mean. So if my cost of cultivation is, let's say, we will take it up to be rupees 200, but I am receiving MSP that is rupees 300. So MSP is more than my cost of cultivation, as we can clearly see. So this is what we're going to discuss. Okay? So we see that when MSP is beyond the cost of cultivation, it often leads to market distortion and food deprivation. Okay? This is also one of your PYQs. So the first kind of market distortion is cropping pattern distortion. Now, what do we mean by cropping pattern distortion? So consider that MSP is high only for your certain crops, right? MSP is high only for certain crops. So what does it lead to? Farmers will start growing these crops again and again because the government is guaranteeing them that they are going to purchase these crops from the farmers, right? So they stop growing crops people actually need more. They don't care about what crops people actually need more. Farming decisions become dependent on the government policy and not on market demand. So they are dependent on the government policy. So if the government announces today that they're going to provide MSP for, let's say, oil seeds, so the farming focus shifts entirely on oil seeds, but the market is not demanding oil seeds. Let's say the market demand is of cotton, let's just assume this, okay? But the farmers will keep on producing oil seeds because they've been guaranteed that they would receive a price for it. That is why we say that it leads to cropping pattern distortion, right? So in reality, strong MSP support mainly exists for, we know, two crops only. First is wheat and second is rice. These two crops are the most supported under MSP because the government actually buys these crops in large quantities, right? That is what is written over here. You can also read it out that the MSP becomes the primary price signal that guides farmers' decisions rather than actual market demand. So MSP starts acting as the price signal rather than farmers seeing the actual market demand, right? That is the reason why India is massively overproducing wheat and rice, and we are underproducing pulses, oil seeds, millets, and vegetables, right? So even if the market needs other crops more, we still choose wheat and rice. The farmers are still choosing to produce wheat and rice. That is why we are overproducing wheat and rice in the first place, because MSP has become a deciding factor for the farmers. So MSP has become a deciding factor for the farmers rather than the actual market demand giving them a signal to produce what is actually demanded in the market, right? So look here, the area under pulses, which was India's primary source of dietary protein, has declined from 15.6% of sown area to 11.4%. And this data was for 2001 and 2002. If we see it for the year 2025, 26, or let's say 2024, so this would have come down even further, right? So the area under pulses has also decreased. And Indians did not stop needing protein. Okay? It is because this price policy made wheat and rice so attractive for the farmers that they started growing it over growing pulses as well. So we can clearly say that MSP is one of the direct contributors to India's protein deficiency crisis, because MSP has lead or helped or aided India to reach a level where India is currently protein deficient nation, right? Because pulses production fell like we just saw, and protein availability also reduced a lot, which also kind of leads to malnutrition and protein deficiency in the country. Okay, that is what we mean when we say that MSP distorts your cropping pattern. So demand and supply are not dictating what the farmers are growing. Government's procurement price becomes the signal. Okay. Now let's come to the second kind of distortion, which is concentration of market power through APMCs. Now this is also very important to understand. So India's agriculture selling system is mainly working through your APMC mandis. Okay, these are the mandis through which the selling process usually takes place. Now these are government regulated markets. This is a government regulated market. Okay, and in many states farmers are legally required also to sell crops only in the approved mandis by the government. So the farmers cannot sell their crops in like any other mandi. They just can't. Okay, they have to sell their crops in these designated APMC mandis. So APMC stands for Agricultural Produce Market Committee, and this is mostly established by the state governments. That is why I said that some states require you to legally sell your produce in these APMC mandis only. Okay, these are the designated mandis which are approved by your state governments. Okay, so farmers cannot sell their crops directly to the companies if they want to. They can't sell their crops directly to companies or to retailers directly. Okay, they have to first go to the mandi and then sell their crops, and farmers also cannot sell their produce directly to the consumers, because these all, like companies, retailers, and consumers, these all fall outside your mandi system. So these components fall outside the mandi system. That is why the farmers cannot sell their output directly to any of these. Okay, now this what happens is that a small group of traders and middlemen, okay, so we have a small groups of traders and you can say your middlemen. What they do is that they gain too much control over the market, so they gain a lot of control over the entire market. Now how does this happen? So first of all, see here that the APMC mandi system is combined with MSP and FCI procurement. As we know that Food Corporation of India procures from these APMC mandis itself, right? Now this creates a structure where farmers have a very limited choice about where and whom to sell. So like we just stated that the farmers cannot sell to companies or retailers or consumers directly, so they are very limited to where they can sell and to whom they can sell, right? So this APMC mandi has a very monopolistic nature. So even though MSP is meant for the farmers, but what happens is that middlemen often capture much of the profit. So middlemen take up much of the profit, and middlemen include your traders. Okay, they also include some commission agents and your money lenders. So these are your middlemen who take up most of the profit rather than the farmers who should be actually getting the profit. So profit is usually taken up by these people, right? That is why we say that the APMC is of a very monopolistic nature, because the farmers are very limited in terms of they don't have much reach to the buyers themselves. So they have very limited buyers option with them. They have a very limited market around them, and they also have very limited bargaining power with them. So that is why we say that the monopolistic nature of the APMC mandis often dominate, and they discourage the farmers, or we can say that they exploit the small farmers. Okay, we also know for a fact that the agrarian structure in India is deeply unequal, right? We know that. We have talked about land ownership before as well, and we know that some farmers own large lands and many own very small tiny lands, right? So we see that a large proportion of farmers are small and marginal. So these are not big farmers, these are small and marginal farmers, and they cultivate less than 2 hectares of land per year. So this is a very overwhelming fact, that these Indian farmers, most of the Indian farmers have such small farms. So these farmers don't own up big lands to cultivate also. They have a lot of small farms, right? They work on a very small farm. Also, before your crops are harvested, so harvesting of crops mean that now it's the harvesting season and you cut the crops, right? So when the crops are harvested, before that happens, farmer actually need loans, and these loans are required for, let's say, seeds or fertilizers, or you might require loan for irrigation, or you might require loan for labor. So farmers often required loan before the harvesting season starts, right? Now the loan that farmers require, this is also called as my working capital. So and to start up any business or to set up any business, you require some working capital with you. So these loans that the farmer require here are called as my working capital. Okay, now banks usually don't give easy loans to small farmers. Okay, so farmers have to borrow money, like we know they have to borrow money, and when they'll have to borrow money, they will go to the traders, or either they'll go to the money lenders. Now these trader and money lenders are known to exploit the farmers, right? They will exploit the farmers, and the loan comes up with a lot of condition. Also, the loan is not easily given, it comes up with a lot of conditions. So the conditions can be that farmers are forced to sell their crops only to the trader who has given them the loan. So if I am the trader and if I have given you the loan, you are forced to sell your supply to me only. Okay, so this also happens. And the trader, if I'm the trader and if I have given you the loan, they will buy crops very cheap, and they will cut also a lot of commissions also. So first thing, they will take a lot of commission for me, and then when the time of buying crops would come, when it would be the time that they have to buy crops for me, they would buy it very at a very cheap price. Okay, so the farmers receive very less than the MSP in this case. Okay, the farmers receive very less than the MSP, because this is not a formal setup to buy or sell crops. This is not a formal setup, right? So the farmers earn very less than the MSP here. So technically, if we see, the farmers have MSP rights with them. But what is the reality? The reality here is that poverty and debt will often prevent you from actually getting the MSP. So because you're so poor and in debt, you often are out of the reach of getting benefits directly from MSP. So this is the reality. Okay, Now, because the farming system is so unequal, like we've just seen, the farming system is so unequal. So even if the government increases MSP, let's say, this is going to only help my big farmers, okay, who produce large quantities of crops and they can easily sell these crops to government agencies. So raising MSP is eventually helping the big farmers rather than it helping the small farmers, because small farmers are not able to directly take up the benefit of MSP. So MSP often helps up big farmers who produce large quantities of crops and they often sell it to the government agencies. So this happens, okay? And small farmers के साथ क्या होता है? Small farmers do not produce enough surplus because they have such small lands. How are they going to produce enough surplus so they can also sell it in the market? Okay, they, like I've already taught you, they do subsistence agriculture mostly. So they do not produce enough surplus, okay, and they cannot also transport their crops to the mandis. So transportation of crops to the mandis is also a task for the small farmers. It becomes difficult for them, okay. And then we also know that they are trapped in the debt arrangements that we just saw with the traders and all, okay. So they are trapped in debt adjustments or debt arrangements also. And they also sell early to the local traders because they need money, so say they start to sell early to your local traders, and that is why they cannot sell to directly to the government, because they've already sold early to the local traders for in exchange of loan or money, okay. So they do not benefit much from a higher MSP. So increasing MSP is not helping farmers in this situation, okay. So we can clearly see that the MSP benefits, if we talk about it, the MSP benefits, this benefit gets concentrated in the hands of your rich farming groups, okay. So this rich farming group is a group of very small farmers, but they are very rich farmers, okay. We often call them surplus producing minority. What are these rich farmers called? They are called as surplus producing minority because they are a minority, because they are less in number, but they produce surplus for the market. So they are your surplus producing minority, large farmers who produce your extra crops beyond the family consumption as well. Now we see here that according to NSSO data, 92% of farmers in India are small and marginal, and they do not cultivate more than 2 hectares of land. So see, imagine 92% of your farmers, if you think about it, they actually are not receiving your MSP benefits, are they? No, right? Because they are small or marginal farmers. They are not big farmers. So they are usually trapped in debt and poverty. And God knows if they are actually able to, reap the benefits of MSP that the government is providing to them, right? So they have small land holdings also. They don't have large land holdings with them, and this also impacts how much they are able to grow. So this impacts the amount of crops that they are able to grow as well, okay. And we also have to consider a fact that a lot of small farmers that we see, they actually buy more food rather than they sell that, okay. So these farmers are usually, we call them buyers of food. We call them buyers of food rather than sellers, because they are such small farmers. They actually buy more food from the market than they sell, okay. And their production is too little for commercial profit, so their production is very less. It's so less that they cannot actually sell it in the market and make profit out of it, okay. So they behave mostly like consumers rather than your sellers. So they also behave like consumers only rather than big producers. So these farmers, like we have mentioned here, are net buyers of food and not seller of food, okay. Now let us look at what happens when MSP rises. So if MSP is raised by the government, what happens is that food prices will also start rising in the market. So food prices will also start rising in the market because your MSP has increased. Government is providing more money to the farmers, so it also means that it is in a way increasing the food prices in the market, and consumers have to pay more money out of their pocket to obtain the crops, or obtain the food basically from the market, to obtain the agricultural produce from the market, right? And in this case, your small farmers are also going to suffer if MSP rises. Why they're going to suffer? Because these farmers will also have to buy food, because like I mentioned, they are also net buyers only, right? So they also have to buy food at the higher prices because of MSP. So they also have to buy food at the higher prices, but they do not sell. Like we said, they do not sell enough crops to gain from MSP. So the irony is that MSP rising should actually help them, but MSP rising actually makes them suffer more, because they cannot sell in the market at MSP prices because they do not produce that much. So they eventually have to buy more food at the higher prices due to MSP, okay. So they lose more as your consumers. So they lose more as consumers rather than them gaining as producers. So this is a very important distinction that we should remember, okay. They don't have your enough marketable surplus, which we call. So because they don't have enough marketable surplus to sell in the market, this means that extra marketable surplus basically means whatever extra crop that you are left with after you basically saving for your family's consumption. So these farmers don't have enough marketable surplus, and that is why they also have to suffer a lot. Now come to the third distortion, which is your negative externalities. So what does this actually mean? Let me first explain you that. Okay, so like we have already seen that high MSP we have for crops such as wheat and rice, right? These crops are supported by high MSP, and we also give farmers, cheap electricity, and we also give subsidies on, let's say, fertilizers, right? We also provide subsidy on fertilizer. So all of this happening has damaged your environment. Now how has it damaged the environment? Let us understand that. So this problem, first of all, is very serious in places like Punjab and Haryana, where green revolution was initially introduced, and green revolution farming became dominant at these places. So what happens is that, see, the farmers working in these places, they know that the government is definitely going to buy, let's say, paddy for them. So they are sure that the government is definitely going to buy paddy from them, and the government is also giving you electricity. Let's say the government is giving you free electricity for your tube wells. This is also free for you, okay? So there is no financial reason for you to save water. Why would you save water? First of all, you are not poor because you know that the government is going to buy from you, okay? So you are definitely going to earn your income, and you also know that you don't have to pay for electricity because electricity is free for you. So there is no financial reason for you to save water, and this is how you damage the environment. Because even in some areas where water is kind of limited, what happens is that farmers keep growing paddy, and you should know that growing paddy requires a lot of water, right? So farmers keep growing paddy because it gives them a guaranteed income, like we just saw, because MSP gives you that incentive to grow crops that are supported by it. So farmers know that they are going to get a guaranteed income out of it, and that is why they keep on growing, let's say, paddy. Okay, now paddy requires huge amounts of water. So this policy, like we can see, is encouraging this behavior to be careless and harm the environment, okay? So what will the farmers do? They will continue basically pumping the underground water for irrigation, okay? They continuously start pumping the underground water for irrigation, and as a result, what happens is that groundwater level falls dangerously, okay? So groundwater level falls dangerously in these areas, and we know that this means that there is going to be groundwater depletion, okay? So in these areas we see groundwater depletion happening, okay? And as we also know that India uses very large amounts of waters for farming compared to most of the other countries, right? So this also means that our water footprint is very high. Water footprint means the total water used in production. So the water footprint is really high in India because the total water used in production is a lot. So you will remember this fact also, okay? So you can read till here to understand what we have just discussed right now. And we have also discussed this, that the water footprint of India's agricultural production is highest in the world. Okay, read this fact as well. Then moving ahead, we have also talked about the Punjab Haryana region having the highest water footprint per unit area, and this happens globally. Okay, so Punjab and Haryana globally have the highest water footprint per area. And we have also talked about this incentive structure that is provided by the government that encourages farmers to do over extraction. Okay, so we understand that this is basically a bad policy design, okay? This is a bad policy designed by the government. So government incentives that the government is providing is accidentally creating environmental destruction. So this we have to remember, okay? So read this point. This point suggests that if this continues, then Punjab's farming system may eventually collapse also, because water may run out, right? So the farming system might collapse in places like Punjab and Haryana. Agricultural collapse might happen in India's most productive farming regions within the coming decades. So this is also a possibility. Okay? Now this is what we call as a negative externality. Negative externality means that one person's economic activity creates a hidden cost, okay, for the society. So this is basically a hidden cost for the society as a whole. Okay, so long term damage includes your water scarcity problem. We might have to face water scarcity problem. Environmental destruction is one of them, we have already discussed, and we also saw how it might lead to future agricultural crisis as well, okay? So this will be suffered by everyone, including all our future generations. Now let's come to the fourth kind of market distortion, which is high transaction cost and information symmetry. Okay, so let us discuss this market distortion now. So when the farmers are forced to sell their crops in the mandis that are designated by the state governments, so this also means that they would have to encounter a lot of extra expenses, and this also raises a lot of difficulties for the farmers. Okay, these are called as your transaction costs. These are called as transaction costs. Now farmers have to see, they have to transport their costs to specific government approved markets that we just talked about. Okay, and they also have to pay a lot of charges such as your mandi fees. Okay, there is something called as mandi fees that they have to pay. They also have to pay taxes, and they also have to pay the middleman commissions that we talked about. Okay, so these are the extra charges that these farmers have to pay. Now when you're paying a lot of extra charges, what happens is that this eventually leads to a reduction in your farmer income. ठीक है, or मतलब your farm income. So basically this leads to reduction in farmers income. Okay, so this happens when you have to pay a lot of extra charges like we just talked about. Now it is somehow still okay for the big farmers, but if we talk about the small farmers, they suffer more because they also don't have facilities like having a tractor or trucks. They don't have tractors or trucks with them. They don't also have a lot of big storage facilities with them where they can store their crops. Okay, they don't have much market information. They can easily be made fools, so they don't have much market information with them, and they also don't have bargaining power like we talked about. So selling crops becomes much more harder for them and much more expensive for them also. We can say that it is harder and expensive for the small farmers to basically sell their crops. And talking about the big farmers, they usually have big vehicles. They also have a lot of storage facility, and you might also know that big farmers also have a lot of political connection. Okay, and they also have better information about the market, so they can access your MSP more easily than the small farmers. Now this is what is called as information asymmetry. So information asymmetry means that one side knows much more than the other. Okay, so one side knows more than the other side. So this is asymmetry of information that happens in these kind of markets due to lack of proper information. Okay, so lack of proper information leads to information asymmetry. So the problem that happens is that small farmers only know the MSP price. So they are aware about the MSP price, but they do not know prices in different markets. So they are not aware about the prices that prevail in different markets. Okay? So this lack of information about the actual market price means that they do not know where your prices are higher, in which markets prices are higher, or in which market there is a better demand. Okay? Which market will give me better returns. So they don't know about these things, which market is going to give me higher price, or where I'm going to get higher demand or higher returns. They are unaware about these kind of information. Okay, and the traders that you see, the traders usually know more than these small farmers. The traders have much more information. That is why they manipulate your prices, and they can also exploit these small farmers. So that is what the traders usually do, that they have an idea about the prices. That is why they're able to exploit these small farmers. So the government tries to solve these market problems using technology, and one of those was ENAM, which is the Electronic National Agricultural Market, which was launched in the year 2016. Now what is ENAM? Let us quickly discuss about that. So ENAM is basically your online platform. Okay, this is one of your online platforms where your farmers and the traders, both farmers and traders, can buy or sell their crops digitally. So this process takes place digitally. Both your farmers and traders can buy or sell your crops digitally in platforms like ENAM, because this is an online platform. Okay, and the goal of the government when they introduced ENAM was that they wanted to provide better price information, because the farmers did not had price information with them. So the government wanted the farmers to have better price information, and they also wanted to create more competition between the buyers. They wanted to create competition. A healthy competition is important in a market. That is what the goal of the government was, to create competition between the buyers in the market. Okay, they also wanted to reduce the impact of middleman that exists in these markets, and they also wanted to have fair prices for farmers in the market. Okay, so this is a unified basically online trading platform. This is a unified trading platform, means this is a single stop digital market. Okay, this is your digital market, and this connects all the different mandis that you have across India. This will connect all those mandis that exist across India. So with the help of enam, farmers will have better price information because they can look at all the mandis. Okay, there will be competition among buyers, middlemen will not have much say in dictating the prices, and the farmers will receive a fair price. So this was why enam was launched by the government. You also have a previous year question on enam, so please make sure to check that out. We also see that in reality enam has not worked out very well for small farmers because it has not reduced selling expenses that the farmers earlier faced. So selling expenses have not reduced, then farmers profit also has not improved. After the introduction of enam, we don't see that there is an improved farmer profit, and it has also not made selling crops any easy. So it is not easier to sell crops through enam as well. So the efficiency that we talked about, market efficiency, when we talk about it, this means that how smoothly and how smoothly and cheaply, we can say, your crops are sold in the market. So enam has not been much used in terms of market efficiency. So this is what has been written over here. You can read out the reasons for the failures of enam. So there is poor internet connectivity in rural areas, and enam is a digital platform like we just saw. There is also lack of digital literacy among farmers. They don't know actually how to operate, and these are the technological side issues. But we also see that the deeper structure of rural India itself creates a lot of barriers, we can say. Okay, so many villages we know have weak internet access, and without any reliable internet, online trading becomes very difficult. And then farmers are also not comfortable with using smartphones or online systems, so they cannot fully use your platform like enams. Okay, so this becomes difficult for them. And the existing traders and middlemen that you have, they oppose these kind of reforms because they fear that they will lose out on profit that they were easily able to exploit for from the farmers. So that is why they oppose such reforms by the government as well. This is what we mean by the third point, resistance from entrenched trader interest, right? And the fourth point is that we have, even if the online platform exists, farmers still face practical problems like we have poor roads. All right, we have poor roads, we have lack of your transport, and we also have as you might have heard in news, that we have storage shortages as well. We have a lot of storage shortages also. And this is what we mean by last mile infrastructure. So India also faces the issue of last mile infrastructure being adequate. So we have inadequate last mile infrastructure. So if you look at the question, we have already talked about the market distortion part. Now let us talk about the food deprivation part. So now let us talk about the food deprivation argument that exists. This says that when we have high MSP, this not only creates market problems like we just discussed, this can also increase hunger and food insecurity among poor people. So it often increases hunger and food insecurity among the poor people, and this happens in a lot of ways. Okay, so we're going to discuss that one by one. So the first thing is that when the government providing MSP is much higher than the normal market price that exists, when MSP is much higher than your normal market prices, farmers will prefer selling to the government, right? Farmers prefer selling to the government rather than selling to the private markets. So these are your private markets, okay? But the MSP price is much higher than the normal market prices. So farmers prefer selling to the government, right, rather than them selling to the private markets, because they can earn more by selling to the government. Okay, so what happens is that in these private markets, supply will fall down because nobody is selling in these private markets, right? So because more crops go to the government procurement, less food remains available in the normal markets, right? So open market supply will decrease. Okay, open market supply is going to fall. Now what does this mean? This means that when supply falls, prices increase, right? Prices increase in these markets. Food prices is going to increase. Okay, so poor people buy most of their food from normal markets, like right? So their salaries are not increasing with increasing inflation that is there. Okay, so when food will become expensive, you will be buying less food, and when you buy less food, this will lead to lack of nutrition. Okay, and you also might realize that these poor people often skip a lot of meals because they cannot afford eating even 3 times a day, right? So this usually leads to food deprivation. So this is how higher MSP leads to food deprivation. This is what we meant by higher MSP leading to food deprivation. Okay, and these poor households often do not own any land. Okay, they don't own any land, and they also produce very little, because we have already seen that they're net buyers. Okay, so they produce very little amount, so they fully rely on these market purchases for their survival. And when food becomes expensive, poor families only have two choices, right? The first choice is that they can spend money on food, ठीक है, या तो they can reduce their consumption. So either you spend money on food or you reduce your consumption. And what do you think these people choose? both of these are harmful, okay? Because if you spend more money on food, this means that you are spending lesser money on other items. And if you're reducing your consumption, this means that you are pushing yourself and your family into food deprivation, okay? So both of these outcomes often worsen food security, okay? So food security becomes a threat. So in both these cases, people suffer from insecurity regarding your regular food access. So because regular food access becomes difficult, so people often face your food insecurity. So just pause your screens and read point number 1, and let's move to point number 2 then. This says that higher food prices raises the cost of food as a wage good. Now let me explain this to you in detail. So what happens is that food is a basic necessity that workers need to survive, right? If I have workers working for me, they of course need food to survive. This is a basic necessity, okay? But when food prices rises, what happens is that the cost of maintaining these workers also rises. So if workers work for me and food prices have increased, this means that the cost of maintaining these workers also increases. Now this is called food as a wage good. This means food as a wage good. ठीक है? This is what we mean when we say food as a wage good. Because see, workers would be demanding for higher salaries, right? They would demand higher salaries because they need more money to buy the same amount of food that they used to buy earlier. So real consumption, if we talk about real consumption, this means the actual purchasing power. So the purchasing power falls when prices increase. So that is why they demand higher salaries, because they want to maintain their real consumption that there was earlier before the increase in the food prices. But what happens if the company will pay high wages? What will happen if the company starts paying high wage? This means that the production cost for these companies is going to increase. The production cost is going to rise, and the factory good the good that the factory produces, the factory goods, these are now going to become more expensive. So do you see the cycle that exists? If food prices increase, this means that eventually these workers are demanding high wages. This means the factory has to increase its production cost. When the factory increases its production cost, it means that the goods that the factory makes, these goods are going to become expensive because the costs for these factories have increased. So this means that this is spreading inflation throughout the economy, है ना? Inflation is getting spread across throughout the economy. So this is a chain reaction, like we can see. This chain reaction works in a way that first of all food prices increase, then wages increase, and after wages being increased, industrial prices, like we see, industrial prices also increase. So first food prices increased, and eventually we see that it led to an increase in the industrial prices. So this is how the chain reaction works. So this is what point number 2 is suggesting. Now let's come to point number 3, which says that high MSP combined with large scale government procurement creates a fiscal pressure on the government. Now what does this point mean? So when the government is buying huge quantities of crops at high MSP, this means that the government spends a lot of money, right? So this creates pressure on the finances of the government, and that is what we mean by the fiscal pressure burden on the budget of the government, because a lot of money goes out in providing subsidy, and that creates a fiscal pressure on the government's budget. So the government is spending money on buying your grains, then this part already includes a lot of money being spent on buying grains. Then you also have to store grains, so the government is also paying to storing grains. Then the government also has to pay for the transportation of grains, so they're also paying for the transportation. Then distribution also costs you, because you're distributing through the PDS system. So there are a lot of layers of money being spent without any money being earned in return, okay? So that is what it leads to, high MSP leads to. And it also leads to crowding out for the other sectors, as we know, because a lot of money is already spent on MSP procurement, then the government has less money left with themselves for all the other important sectors. So that is why crowding out happens in the other remaining sectors. So this is what point number 3 is stating right here. Now let's come to point number 4, which says that the commodity bias of MSP towards wheat and rice, this creates nutritional food deprivation even when caloric sufficiency is achieved. So we have already talked about this point in the last video itself, that MSP supports wheat and rice, like we have already mentioned. So this means that if you're producing a lot of wheat and rice and the people are also consuming it, which means that India is already producing a lot of calories, but we are not producing enough nutritious food because we are only relying on your wheat and rice. So we are not producing enough nutritious nutritious foods, but we already achieve caloric sufficiency, okay? So people can get enough calories because of the production of wheat and rice, but this will still suffer from your poor nutrition. So this is what we mean by this point. So you have your overflowing grain stocks, but you also have malnutrition at the same time existing in your country. So your grains are getting wasted at the storage units that the government has, but the country is still suffering from malnutrition. Let us finally discuss this last alternative argument in favor of higher MSP, because we in the question were asked to also state that whether a higher MSP has some advantage or not, because right now we have only talked about the disadvantages. So let us talk about the arguments that support higher MSP. Okay, the first argument that supports higher MSP is that farmers need remunerative prices. Now, this means that the supporters of higher MSP say that farmers must earn enough profit, okay, from farming. That is why farmers need these remunerative prices, okay? These remunerative prices basically mean that prices that are high enough, okay? This means that prices that are high enough to give you decent income and profit, okay? This is the meaning of remunerative prices. So these people want that farming should not become a loss making activity, farming should not be a loss making activity, and farmers should be able to survive and live with dignity also, okay? Through agriculture, they should not lead a life without dignity. So, MSP set at all the remunerative levels is the direct mechanism to ensure that farming remains viable, which means that farming should not be loss making and farming should remain economically viable, something that you want to do as a job or as a profession. Okay? And the Swaminathan Commission's recommendation of C2 plus 50% was about this logic that farmers should earn enough profit. That is why the Swaminathan Commission, voted for. That is why the Swaminathan Commission actually advocated for C2 plus 50% logic for the farmers. Okay, the second argument is terms of trade and investment incentives. Now, this means that terms of trade means that you have to do a comparison. This comparison is between the prices that farmer receive, the prices that they receive, and the prices that they pay for the industrial goods. So the prices they pay versus the prices they receive, this is what the terms of trade means, to do a comparison between prices they receive and the prices that they actually have to pay. So the supporters of higher MSP say that higher MSP improves the terms of trade for agriculture relative to non-agriculture, which means that when the government provides enough subsidy to these farmers, so they receive higher prices and they have to pay less prices. So the terms of trade are in favor of these is in favor of these farmers. Okay, then the third point is protection against market power of traders. This we have already discussed, that MSP will protect farmers from exploitation by traders and middlemen. But we have also seen the alternative argument to it, and we know that the small farmers are weak and they are dependent on your traders and money lenders. Okay? So these groups have a lot of strong control over all the rural markets that we have in India. So the rural markets are in direct influence of these traders and the middlemen. So this is up to you to decide whether you think that higher MSP gives protection or does it exploit the small farmers, okay, against these traders. Now, the fourth argument is about food security through farmer incentives. This means that higher MSP will encourage the farmers to continue producing food. Okay? So, food security is achieved through providing these incentives to the farmers. This is what the supporters of higher MSP advocate for. So, if farmers are uncertain about their income, they may stop investing in farming. So this can reduce food production in the future, है ना? Food production can get impacted in the future. So supporters remind us that India became food sufficient largely because of MSP during the Green Revolution. So if MSP is removed, let's say, then farming becomes less profitable for farmers because farmers may reduce their investment that they were doing in farming, right? And then the productivity might also fall in the farming sector. The productivity might fall and some may also stop farming completely. So this can threaten your long run food production. Okay, this can threaten long run food production in the country.